2% of the population runs a mind so radically different from everyone else's that most of them spend their entire lives feeling like they landed on the wrong planet. While the other 98% react to the world, the inch is already 3 steps ahead, running mental simulations of futures that haven't arrived yet, identifying patterns nobody else can even see. Rarest Mind Planet. Most people look at an inch and see someone cold, calculating, unreachable. But that's exactly where everyone is wrong, and here's what almost nobody understands. Something I'll come back to near the end of this video. Beneath that fortress of logic, there's a need so fundamental that suppressing it becomes their single greatest source of suffering. In the next few minutes, you're going to understand exactly how the rarest mind in the world is wired, why it creates both extraordinary capability and extraordinary loneliness, and what happens when the 2% finally stop hiding the part of themselves that makes them most human. The inch, introverted, intuitive, thinking, judging, is found in roughly 2% of the global population. Among women, the number drops to less than 1%. Rarest type, Earth. Carl Jung first described these cognitive patterns in the early 20th century, and what the Myers-Briggs system later formalized into a typology is, at its core, a description of how information flows through a very particular kind of mind. The inch is governed by what researchers call a cognitive stack. 4 mental functions operating in a specific hierarchy. 1 Ni, introverted intuition, the dominant function. 2 T, extroverted thinking, the auxiliary function. 3 Phi, introverted feeling, the tertiary function. 4 C, extroverted sensing, the inferior function. Together, these 4 functions create what looks from the outside like a strategic supercomputer. Logical, efficient, relentless, but that description only captures the surface. The engine running underneath is something far more complex and far more human than it first appears. What makes this architecture so rare is the specific interaction between these 4 functions, and it starts with the dominant one, the one that changes everything about how an inch experiences reality. Here's something that might disturb you. The inch doesn't decide what they intuitively know, it just arrives. Knowing. Introverted intuition, Ni, is the dominant cognitive function of the inch, and it operates almost entirely outside of conscious awareness. While most people gather data through their 5 senses and reason from the ground up, the inch mind is constantly running in the background, scanning for patterns across vast distances of time and information. Psychologist Isabel Briggs Myers described this as perception without knowing how you know. The inch doesn't analyze step by step, they synthesize. They collapse complex systems down to their essential structure. They see the skeleton underneath the flesh, and most unnervingly, they see where things are going before they get there. Their predictions tend to land with uncomfortable accuracy. Think about what this means in practice. An inch reads a political situation and senses the outcome years before it materializes. They enter a new relationship and immediately feel how it will end. They look at a failing organization and see exactly where the rot started. They are not guessing. Their mind is running probability models that their conscious brain can barely articulate. Now, if you recognize this pattern in yourself, hit like and subscribe to keep exploring the depths of your psyche with me. Because what I'm about to reveal next is why this gift so often feels like a curse. Stop and think about this for a second. What does it feel like to see the ending of a story while everyone else is still reading the opening chapter? For the inch, this is not a metaphor, this is Tuesday. They don't observe the world. They model it, project it forward, and operate from a version of reality that doesn't exist yet. Introverted intuition creates what could be described as an internal simulation chamber, a living mental model of reality that is constantly being updated, refined, and projected forward in time. The inch doesn't just observe the present. They build a map that includes where the present is heading, and then they operate from that map rather than from raw sensory experience. They aren't living in the present moment. They are living 3 years ahead of it. Carl Jung wrote that the intuitive type perceives the possibilities of a situation, not its current state. The intuitive is never found in the world of accepted reality. He is always in search of possibilities. This is why inch so often seem detached from what is happening right now. They aren't ignoring reality. They're operating from a deeper layer of it, a layer that includes the trajectory, not just the position. The problem, when you show people a future they cannot yet see, they don't call you visionary, they call you arrogant. And that specific misunderstanding is just the beginning of why the inch carries such a particular kind of loneliness. What the second function adds to this architecture makes the picture even more complicated. But here's where it gets even more interesting. What good is a vision of the future if you have no capacity to build it? the Inch's second function, extroverted thinking, is the engineering department that converts insight into architecture. Extroverted thinking, or T, is the cognitive function of systems, efficiency, and external implementation. While introverted intuition sees the destination, T constructs the road. It organizes, it creates hierarchies, it measures, evaluates, and eliminates waste with surgical precision. Systems order, execute, and it is relentlessly, almost ruthlessly, results-oriented. This is why Inch tend to excel wherever long-range planning, strategic thinking, and structural problem-solving intersect. They examine a complex system, identify the broken mechanism, design a repair, and implement it without the interference of sentiment. The cognitive pattern is consistent across domains. Build the ideal model first, then reverse engineer the exact steps required to reach it. But extroverted thinking has a shadow side. In its underdeveloped form, T sounds less like strategic clarity and more like, "This is inefficient, you are wrong, and here is exactly why." Delivered with the emotional warmth of a technical report, which brings us to the function that almost everyone misses when they try to understand the Inch. The one that lives beneath all the logic. The one hiding so deep that even the Inch sometimes forgets it is there. Now forget everything you think you know about the Inch being emotionally unavailable, because the third function in their cognitive stack, introverted feeling, reveals something that should fundamentally change how you see this type. Introverted feeling, Phi, is the most private, most protected, and most consistently misunderstood dimension of the Inch inner world. Unlike extroverted feeling, which expresses emotion outwardly and reads a room, introverted feeling is entirely internal. It operates as a deep, constantly active moral compass, a set of values so personal and so core to the Inch identity that they will defend them at almost any cost, quietly, without announcement. The cold exterior conceals an intensely warm core. Here's what that looks like in practice. The Inch who seems unmoved by your argument has, underneath that stillness, a profound ethical framework. They feel deeply. They simply do not perform what they feel. The feeling belongs entirely to themselves. Isabel Briggs Myers wrote that the Inch holds their values quietly but intensely, and that any violation of those values can produce a reaction that surprises everyone who assumed this person operated on pure reason. Logic will get you from A to Z. Imagination will get you everywhere. The Inch runs on both. They simply hide one behind the other. The deepest feelings belong to no one but themselves. And what enables that hiding is something even more revealing. The function they were never built to handle. Every cognitive architecture has its Achilles heel. For the Inch, it is extroverted sensing, the function of present moment awareness, physical sensation, spontaneity, and immediate experience. C is the function that makes someone genuinely alive in the here and now, and for the Inch, it is chronically underdeveloped. The Inch lives almost entirely in a world that doesn't yet physically exist. In mental models, future simulations, and abstract pattern systems with no sensory address. The present moment, with all its noise and unpredictability and sensory demand, is genuinely uncomfortable for them. They can draft a 5-year strategic roadmap with perfect precision and forget to notice they haven't eaten since yesterday. They can analyze the subtext of a political crisis with extraordinary nuance and completely miss the body language of the person standing directly in front of them. It is the shadow of their greatest strength, the price of living so far ahead. But the inferior function does something more dangerous under stress. When the Inch is pushed past their limit, C erupts. The normally composed, analytical person suddenly becomes hypersensitive to physical irritations, overindulges in sensory pleasure, or fixates on minor discomforts in a way that bewilders everyone around them, including themselves. And when all 4 of these functions are running simultaneously inside a social environment, the consequence is something that most people never see coming. And this next part is the one that kept me up at night. What does it feel like to be the only person in the room who already knows how the conversation is going to end and has to sit through it anyway? For the Inch, this experience is not occasional, it is constant. They already know how the meeting ends before it begins. The combination of introverted intuition and extroverted thinking means the Inch processes reality at a fundamentally different speed and depth than most people around them. They have already reached a conclusion before others have finished framing the question, and social interaction, which is already energetically expensive for any introvert, becomes an additional layer of performance, pretending to deliberate on decisions they made 20 minutes ago, pretending to consider options they already eliminated. Different always profoundly. Isabel Briggs Myers noted that the Inch often experiences a deep sense of being fundamentally different from peers, not in an ego-driven way, but in a disorienting, isolating way. like someone who is fluent in one language and lives in a country where everyone speaks another. Researchers studying cognitively gifted individuals, many of whom share functional traits with the inch, describe a phenomenon called asynchronous development. The mind advances so far ahead of social and emotional calibration that the individual experiences a permanent gap between how they think and how people around them communicate. Loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you. The inch knows this gap intimately, but there is a darker consequence to all of this, one most people never see coming, and it makes everything we have talked about look gentle by comparison. Here's where the story takes a dark turn, because when introverted intuition combines with extroverted thinking without sufficient grounding in introverted feeling, when the vision runs too hot and the execution becomes too rigid, the inch's greatest strengths begin working directly against them. The first shadow is perfectionism. The inch internal model of how things should be is calibrated to a standard that reality almost never meets. Their standard of perfection exists only inside their mind, and the gap between that standard and reality never fully closes. They become their own harshest critics, and often everyone else's, not from malice, from a precision instrument that has no off switch. Perfect or nothing. The second shadow is intellectual arrogance. When you consistently see outcomes that others miss, it becomes genuinely difficult to trust external judgment. The inch can slide into a pattern of dismissing collaboration, refusing feedback, and operating in intellectual isolation, convinced their internal model is more accurate than any outside input. This is sometimes true. It is never completely true. The third shadow is emotional suppression. The introverted feeling at the center of everything doesn't disappear because the inch refuses to acknowledge it. It builds pressure beneath the surface until it erupts in ways that shock everyone, including the inch themselves. Every suppressed emotion eventually finds its exit. Rupture. And this is the dark doorway that leads directly to the thing I promised you at the very beginning. The hidden truth that explains every pattern in the inch life. Let me pause here because this next part changes the entire picture. I told you at the very start of this video that beneath the fortress of logic, there was a need so fundamental that suppressing it becomes the inch's single greatest source of suffering. This is it. Longing. The inch doesn't just want to be understood, they desperately need it. Understood in the way that requires someone to actually follow the full depth of their thinking. Not to be tolerated, not to be admired from a safe distance, not to be managed or simplified or talked down to. Beneath the self-sufficiency, the intellectual independence, and the carefully constructed fortress of logic, there is a longing so profound and so rarely satisfied that most inch have learned to bury it so deep they can no longer locate it themselves. They need a mind that can keep up. A relationship where they don't have to translate themselves into a simpler language. A space where their vision is met with genuine comprehension rather than polite confusion or quiet resentment. This is the pattern beneath every inch relationship that collapsed under the weight of unexpressed need, not because they didn't care, but because caring required vulnerability, and vulnerability contradicted every efficient instinct wired into their cognitive architecture. They don't pull away because they feel nothing. They pull away because they feel everything and have nowhere safe to put it. Research on introverted intuitive types consistently identifies what psychologists call existential loneliness. Not situational loneliness, but the deeper ache of sensing that no one truly shares your inner world. The individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe. If you try it, you will be lonely often and sometimes frightened. But no price is too high to pay for the privilege of owning yourself. For the inch, this is not philosophy, this is daily experience. Do you think the inch's greatest strength is their vision, or the emotional depth they keep hidden? Comment vision or depth below. I want to know which one resonated with you. And yet, after everything, the isolation, the misunderstanding, the shadow functions, the longing that lives beneath the logic. After all of it, the inch remains one of the most extraordinary configurations of human consciousness that exists. Because the same introverted intuition that makes them feel alien is the function that drives human progress forward. The same extroverted thinking that makes them seem cold is the mechanism that builds systems which outlast their creators by centuries. Vision, legacy, clarity. The architects of the long game, the ones who see around corners while everyone else is focused on the intersection directly in front of them. Tesla, Newton, Nietzsche, minds that modeled reality differently and built futures that the rest of the world eventually moved into. And the introverted feeling at the center of it all, that is not a weakness to be corrected or a vulnerability to be ashamed of. That is the moral anchor that prevents the vision from becoming something inhuman. The compass that keeps the strategic mind tethered to something worth building for. The rarest minds carry the heaviest responsibility, to build something worthy of what they can see. If you are an inch, the work is not to become more like everyone else. The work is to stop treating your need for deep connection as evidence of weakness. To stop using intellectual independence as armor against the vulnerability that makes genuine connection possible. The strength is not diminished by admitting the longing. The rarest mind in the world deserves a life as deep as its vision. That is the gift, and it becomes available the moment the 2% decide that being understood matters more than appearing not to need it. Every element of the inch, the pattern recognition, the strategic execution, the buried values, the sensory blind spot, the longing that lives beneath the logic, is part of a single coherent architecture. A mind built to see what others miss, to build what others cannot imagine, and to carry the weight of that vision largely alone. But loneliness is not destiny, and the fortress, however well constructed, is not a home. Open the door. The growth edge for the rarest mind in the world is not greater efficiency or more elegant systems or more accurate predictions. It is learning to value the buried heart, to let the depth of the inner world be witnessed by someone else, even once. Especially once. One must still have chaos in oneself to be able to give birth to a dancing star. If you recognized yourself in this, or recognize someone you love, I want to leave you with this: being rare is not the same as being wrong. The world genuinely needs the 2%. It needs their vision, their precision, their relentless drive toward what could be. It just needs them to be whole, not just brilliant, whole. If you made it this far, prove it. Comment introverted vision below. It is the rarest thing in any comment section. Just like the mind we explored today, welcome to the Psyche Project.